Okay, picture this. It's 2 a.m. An alert starts screaming from your SIM dashboard. There's some really unusual outbound traffic coming from a critical server. Your heart starts pounded, right? Is it just a false positive, or is this the real deal? This exact moment is where your CSIA plus incident response knowledge has to kick in. So let's dive into this and get you ready for that call, and more importantly, for the exam.
First things first, we've got to speak the right language. For the exam, you absolutely have to know the difference between a security event and a security incident. So, a security event, that's just any observable thing happening in a system. You know, a user logging in, a simple port scan, those are events. But a security incident, that's a violation or the imminent threat of one. An event becomes an incident when it actually crosses that line, like an attacker successfully grabbing a file they shouldn't have access to. Just remember, every incident is made up of events, but not every event is an incident. Getting that distinction down is it's crucial.
So here's our game plan for this explainer. Think of it as your field guide. We'll nail down the foundations, then we'll walk through the official NIST response lifecycle. After that, we'll break down some key attack frameworks, learn how to classify how bad an incident is, and then we'll wrap up by testing what you've learned. Let's get right to it.
Look, when an incident strikes, you don't just wing it. You follow a playbook. And for the CySA Plus exam, the one, the only, the definitive playbook is the Incident Response Lifecycle from NIST. That's the National Institute of Standards and Technology. So let's break down what's inside.
Now, what's really cool about this process is that it's not just a straight line. You see those arrows looping back? That's there for a reason. It shows you that incident response is a super dynamic process. You might jump from, say, containment right back to analysis because you found something new. It's a cycle, not a one-way street.
All right, so here they are, the 4 official phases you have to know: preparation, detection and analysis, containment, eradication and recovery, and finally, post-incident activity. For the exam, knowing exactly what happens in each of these phases is non-negotiable, so let's break them down, starting right at the top with preparation.
Phase 1, preparation. This is all the work you do before an incident ever happens. It's all about being ready. A huge piece of this is getting your toolkit together. We're talking digital forensic workstations, backup devices, maybe some bootable USB drives with all your special tools. But it's not just about the gear, right? It's also about training your team, actually testing your response plans to see if they work, and having crystal clear procedures written down. You know, good preparation is really half the battle won. Okay, phase 2 is where the action really starts: detection and analysis. So how do you even know something's wrong? Well, here are the most common ways. You're watching for alerts from your security tools like an IDS or a SIEM. You're digging through log files from servers and firewalls. You're keeping an eye on public vulnerability announcements. And never, ever forget this one. You're listening to the people in your organization who report that something just feels off. This is where your inner detective really gets to shine.
So once you confirm you've got a live incident, you shift gears hard into phase 3. This is where you go on the offensive. Your first job is containment. You got to stop the bleeding and limit the damage. While you're doing that, you're also carefully gathering evidence for later. Once it's contained, you move to eradication, which is just a fancy word for kicking the attacker and all their malware completely off your systems. And finally, recovery, which is all about safely bringing your business back to normal operations.
The incident is over. The fire is out. But the work is not done. Phase 4, post-incident activity, is all about learning and getting better. For the exam, just burn this into your brain. This phase answers 3 critical questions. Forensic analysis answers what happened. Root cause analysis answers why did it happen. And the lessons learned review answers how do we stop this from ever happening again. Trust me, this phase is heavily tested, so lock in those 3 questions.
To properly respond to an attack, you've got to understand how attackers think and operate. The CySA Plus exam specifically calls out 3 major attack frameworks that you are expected to know inside and out. These help us model what the bad guys are doing. First up is the classic, the Lockheed Martin cyber kill chain. This framework views an attack as a very linear, 7-step process. It starts with reconnaissance, the attacker scoping you out, and it ends with actions on objectives, which is them actually doing the damage or stealing the data. As a defender, your job is to break this chain at any link. Here's your exam tip. If you get a question that describes an attack like a sequence, step by step, your brain should immediately scream cyber kill chain. Next, we have the diamond model. Now, instead of a linear chain, this model focuses on the relationships between 4 key elements: the adversary,
the victim, their capability, and the infrastructure they use. This model is awesome for analysts because it lets you pivot between these points. So for the exam, if you see a question about, say, connecting an attacker's tools to the servers they used, or finding other victims based on the same malware, that's a huge signal that they're talking about the diamond model. And finally, the big one, MITRE ATT&CK. This isn't really a simple model, it's a massive global knowledge base. The best way to think about it is like an encyclopedia of every single tactic, technique, and procedure that attackers use in the real world. Now, for the CySA Plus, you do not need to memorize the whole thing, thank goodness, but you must understand its structure and how it's used to map your defenses against what attackers are actually doing out there.
Okay, so you've got multiple alerts firing off at the same time. Which one do you handle first? That's where incident classification comes in. You need a standard, repeatable way to measure how severe something is, and yep, you guessed it, we're turning back to the NIST guidelines that you're going to see on the exam.
First, we look at the functional impact. This basically measures how badly the incident is affecting the organization's ability to actually do its job. The scale runs from none all the way to high. For the exam, you've got to know these definitions. For example, a medium impact means a critical service is lost, but only for a subset of users. This is one of those tables you'll just want to memorize. Next up, you have to think about the money. The economic impact is categorized by how much financial loss there is. The thresholds are pretty straightforward. Low impact is anything under $10,000, medium is between 10 grand and $500,000, and high is anything over $500,000. These numbers really help management understand just how bad things are in terms they definitely understand. And finally, you need to classify the recoverability effort. This is all about how much time and how many resources it's going to take to get back to normal. Is it regular, meaning your existing team can handle it? Is it extended, meaning you're going to have to call in outside help? Or in the absolute worst-case scenario, is it not recoverable? This right here dictates the urgency and the scale of your entire response. All right, you have absorbed a ton of theory. Now let's put it into practice. Acing the CySA Plus is all about applying this knowledge to real-world scenarios. So let's see how you do with a couple of quick questions. First question for you. You've got an active breach happening right now. In which phase do you take steps to limit the damage? Think back to that NIST lifecycle we talked about. And the answer is C. The key phrase there is limiting damage. That is the absolute #1 goal of the containment part of this phase. You are actively stepping in to stop the attacker from making things worse. This is a core concept, and you will see it on the exam. Okay, next one. An incident has taken down email for about a third of your staff. Using that NIST functional impact table we just looked at, how would you classify this? Is it none, low, medium, or high? The correct answer here is C, medium. And why is that? Because if you go back to the NIST definition, a medium impact happens when the organization has lost a critical service for a subset of its users. 30% is definitely a significant subset. See? Memorizing those definitions really pays off. So we've walked through the official playbook, we've dissected how attackers think using those key frameworks, and we've learned how to triage like a pro. The next time that alarm goes off, you'll be that much closer to knowing exactly what to do. So the only question left is, are you ready for the call?